All right, and welcome back to WBCR 88.3 A Saint. I'm Justin Kenny as always, and tonight we have a very special Sienna guest, Janek Ambrose from Assembly Line Productions. So, Janek, thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so why don't you start us off by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I graduated in Siena in 2010 or I think or 2011, and yeah, I'm a film director and producer in Los Angeles, and the founder of Assembly Line Entertainment.
Yeah, so one thing I want to ask you about is where exactly does the name Assembly Line Entertainment come from? Is it that you guys basically just thought it'd be like an assembly line way of making films? Is it some other
Yeah,
way?
yeah,
Where
yeah. So totally,
you
like, so I like starting my company. Actually, former or Siena grad, Joe Rotano, helped me with that name, because I started the company right out of college. But the name, like, I think it was more like it has a little bit of like an homage to like the old style of making movies in the 30s and 40s. They used to call them dream factories, which sometimes I
Yeah.
wish called company Dream Factory. But yeah, it does kind of give off that it's supposed to kind of give off this like the way you make movies for a company is you kind of do have to have a more streamlined way of looking at various films, and kind of each film has its own process of development, pre-production, production, post-production, release, development, pre-production, production, post-production, release. So there's like a methodical way of going through
Yeah.
them, at least from a producer standpoint.
Yeah. And I know for a fact, I know that like you obviously own the company, but how much for those in the audience who probably don't know or aren't aware of you and what your company does, do you take part in like creating the films, writing, or are you just kind of like an A24 where you kind of just take it, promote it, and then just put out in theaters?
No, no. So the company's kind of unique in a way where I started it with really no startup money, and other than some short films and some documentaries when I was like 22 years old, and I gradually started to make them bigger and larger, and then started to get more into financing. So what I did was I basically had a kind of a bifurcated way of going about it, where I would write and direct separately from doing producing, executive producing, and financing. And eventually they kind of hit an apex where now I'll produce some people's movies that I don't write and direct, but I'll also write movies that I'm a producer on and a writer on that's under the company umbrella. And then occasionally even I'll direct a movie under the company umbrella. So I kind of have to wear multiple hats while I produce movies for the company and run the company. But and then occasionally I'll essentially hire myself as a writer or director with co-productions and stuff like that.
Yeah. And I mean, because like you gave me two films really that I got to take a look at. One of them, which I want to start off with, is Money Fascism and Some Sort of Acid, which I must say is an acid trip of a movie in some way, which is very fitting for the title. But
Yeah.
when you came up with that movie, which I believe I have it right in front of me, I believe you were the director and producer of, looking at my notes of it. Um, where did the kind of idea to cover kind of like the economy in that way, and also the name Money Fascism, Some Sort of Acid, where did all that come from?
Well, I really like to kind of I have the way especially when I was a little bit younger, I kind of took the opportunity of getting away with making stuff that was a little bit more cerebral and like out there. Where
Yeah,
now if I ever pitched that movie or something, someone would think I was on acid. It wouldn't make any sense. But 6, 7 years ago, I could do something that was like really bold, more avant-garde, more experimental, and kind of tackle huge ideas like the 2008 financial crisis, the rise of fascism in Europe, and all these kind of big cerebral ideas. And so I was really fortunate where Barbara Defina, who's the producer of Goodfellas and Casino, helped me with the one I shot in Paris. Um, the one that I did, the World War II segment, was one I did, here in Los Angeles. So it really just came about in like a multitude of ideas, of big kind of like grander scheme ideas I had, that I wanted to tackle in my work that I knew I couldn't do later in my career because it was just too experimental and not as narratively structured as you would a traditional film, which I knew I would have to do eventually as my
Yeah.
company grew and and then all that.
Yeah, so you bring up something. There's a line in the film I also want to ask you about, but you bring up something that I find very fascinating is that you said that you couldn't do a film like this unless it was very early on in your career. Like you couldn't do kind of a political diatribe movie, like where it's all over the place, where you have to be more coherent later on in your career. Did you go corporate? Is that what happened, or is it just that you couldn't view like
No,
really
you just
take it seriously
no,
when you go
I wouldn't. I
global?
don't have any interest. I mean, I guess I have interest. My second movie as a director, Mondo Hollywoodland, is really crazy. I mean, it's more of a psychedelic farce. It's like a comedy. It's more narratively structured. But no, I mean,
Yeah,
ultimately, I think you might have like I think you mentioned you saw another movie. Maybe the other one was in the summers where it's like, no, eventually I have to kind of make movies that will be seen by more people than like kind of more of that than that would just watch an art film. So
yeah,
I mean, I think going corporate would be if I was directing Marvel movies. So the movies I still want to make are still very difficult to get made, but they're at least done in the confines of like a traditional movie that you would get a movie star attached to, or at least a well-known actor attached to. It would have a little bit of a genre element. It would be a movie. Money, fascism, and some sort of acid is not a movie. It is literally an avant-garde experimental film. So like being younger though, that kind of helps you in certain parts of the industry to be like, oh, like there's a distinct voice here, blah blah blah, all that crap. So like, so yeah, so I would say now it's more, you know, focused on like true stories and stuff, films I really want to tell that will reach an audience. That's kind of the priority now. It
yeah,
has been for the past, like probably 5 years since I made that movie.
yeah. And the line I wanted to ask you about was there's a line in the film that sticks out to me, and it's one line. It's really just one sentence where the narrator just goes, "Socialism for the rich, capitalism for the poor." Can you dive a little bit more into that quote and where that comes from, and what's your thought process behind that whole entire line?
Well, I think the term is called, I think it was though I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, I think it was Ben Franklin who coined the term, who kind of coined that. And then it got kind of morphed into this terminology called lemon socialism, where yeah, it's capitalism for the rich and socialism for the poor, meaning that especially because the movie involved a financial crisis, it was basically this idea from the perspective of the character, suggesting that the that in America or probably more capitalistic systems, it's the rich get bailed out and Main Street doesn't. I think that's changed a little bit, honestly, since 2008. But yeah, that was the idea behind it. It's basically saying that yeah, like the financial system, at least in the '08 crisis, bailed out banks, but didn't bail out Main Street. So it's like if you took your mortgage out and screwed up, you're kind of on your own. But if you took a lot of crazy bets at, any of these big banks, or you would get bailed out. At least most of them did. So that was the idea behind it. From
Yeah, I know.
from the
Oh,
character's
sorry.
perspective, from the character's perspective, because it's like there is a character in the movie.
Yeah, I know some people probably who would still say that that still continues today, especially after COVID with the PPP loans. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I think with COVID though, I think thankfully, I think a lot of people on Main Street got subsidized too, though. I mean, I think that was probably a lesson learned from that really slow comeback in '08. But yeah, of course. I mean, there's a reason why that phrase was termed um so long ago, where because it's just like it's a timeless thing. Obviously, it's just not going to ever really go away. There's always going to be kind of that that part of politics and economics.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it definitely was kind of a farcical type of movie. But The other movie you showed me or got or gave me that I was able to watch was Ukrainianism Exile. Um, can you go a little bit into that film and basically how they got made? Because
Oh,
you're
I
in
said that. Well,
Ukraine.
I thought when you asked me to send new movies, I thought I said in the summers. Oh yeah, Ukrainians in Exile was the one. Was the one that I did on the border of Ukraine. So that was a much different experience, obviously, because it was like real and not fake. Um, so yeah, Ukrainians in Exile was a movie I shot like basically like 2 weeks into the invasion. So like in or mid March, I think. I went to the border in Przemyśl, which is in the border of Poland and Ukraine, and I went to go help refugees. But naturally, because I'm a filmmaker, I brought my camera and shot it. I basically just shot everything I saw. I didn't really go in with an agenda. I didn't even bring a microphone because I didn't want to bother the refugees. I didn't want to like do on the fly interviews like some cheat like kind of like a cheesy like you know uh like cheesy interview on the fly thing. I kind of just shot with a camera everything I saw every day I was there, and then worked on it from there.
Okay. What was it like being in among the refugees in almost a war zone during that time period?
Yeah, I should say it's to the war still going on, obviously.
Yeah.
I was in Poland. I mean, I was on the border, so I was. It's not like I was in Bakhmut or like Kharkiv or something. So I don't think it was anything to be too worried about. I was on NATO land, but yeah, it was a little weird, especially those first couple weeks when I think a lot of people were just kind of like, what's going on? So there was definitely like I think the whole world was nervous, regardless if they were in America or even Poland, aside from Ukraine, of course. That's a whole different story. But I think everybody was just kind of on edge because of the nuclear aspect, because it was so fresh. So, but yeah, I mean that's pretty much it. I mean, like I said, I didn't go into Ukraine and go because I know a lot of documentary filmmakers who go to the front lines and they're shooting shooting their film in trenches. There's a couple really great films out there, documentaries that are out there like 100 Days in Mariupol and stuff like that. But yeah, so it was a very weird experience for sure, though.
Yeah. Yeah, because I remember when that first started, the war in Ukraine, everybody was focusing on the war, but nobody really thought about the refugees. And I think it's kind of interesting that you decided to focus on the refugees instead of just the combat portion of the whole entire
Yeah,
conflict.
I mean, just to be totally honest, it's like I remember wanting to go into Ukraine, but I mean, a lot of the people were just like, dude, you're just gonna like a lot of the soldiers who I because like a lot of so what I did was a lot of the soldiers would come into Przemyśl because what they had was a pipeline to get equipment for the front lines from Przemyśl to Kiev. So soldiers would come to Przemyśl, and then I ended up helping them. I would go and do runs for them, give it to the soldiers who would go on the front lines. And at one point, I was like, as a filmmaker, I'm like, oh, I want to go in there and get a good shot. But they're like, dude, you're just gonna like get somebody killed. Like, what are you talking about? So like I had to focus on the refugees because I was there helping the refugees, and like so that's really what, to be honest, that's why it's like I just that was the subject matter I was around, so I just shot what I saw. So and then after I did that, I connected with the girl who's in Ukraine, and she did the narration, which helped me kind of tell a story of because like I've seen stuff on refugees, but I never really seen something about somebody who's still in the country people are fleeing and what they think about and what they wonder about their fellow countrymen and women who are leaving. So I thought that was a kind of a weird, an interesting perspective of this woman who's like dealing with the war, but also wondering and hoping that people are taking care of her family and friends who are fleeing the country because it's there's so much uncertainty. So that was kind of the fresh take I had, and I basically just had her just tell her how she or tell me on a voice note, through narration of how she's feeling. I didn't. There's nothing was scripted. I just said, tell me what's going on, and she wrote it out, and then I told her to narrate it with a mic a few times, and then I worked with. Janusz Kaminski's a EP on it, who's Steven Spielberg's cinematographer, and Liev Schreiber and stuff like that is kind of a really cool actor, and we all kind of like helped. it make it like a more of a piece of a very brief film intentionally to kind of capture the ideas in people's heads of being like, this isn't that complicated. Russia invaded Ukraine. There's no excuse for that. And there are a lot of refugees who have to deal with it, regardless of what you think about whether or not we should give them money or all these political things that got kind of thrown into the mix later on. I feel like that was the intention, was really just being like, don't forget what happened here. This was just a clear, a big country invading small country to keep it very simple for people who kind of maybe overthink it and are like, well, actually, it was Ukraine who started the war and all that kind of stuff. So that was my intention. It really was like more of almost like a PSA. I was inspired by the Why We Fight campaigns that were made in the 40s. Well, Frank Capra and William Wyler and John Huston made these films during World War II to help people realize, like, well, why are we fighting in World War II? So that was kind of the inception of the idea as well when I started to actually edit it to make it short.
Yeah.
Like I could have made it longer to feature and stuff and play at a few film festivals, but instead I got a bunch of celebrities to like tweet it out, put it on Instagram, and then I linked it with Liev Schreiber's charity, and we raised a bunch of money for Ukraine. So I feel like there was more utility in the film other than just being like entertainment or playing at like a festival with like a, you know, and so seeing it like a small crowd seeing it. I intentionally made it like something that can go viral with celebrities tweeting it out.
Yeah. It's amazing how sometimes you can fit so much into such a small window of film. Because I'm trying to remember the exact length of the movie. It was like 6, 7 minutes, if I remember
Yeah,
correctly,
no,
right?
it was. Yeah, and I had hours of footage, but it's just I felt like it was more accessible for for the utility I wanted to use it for. To if it was a very brief film because it can be seen online, you know. Or if it was even
Yeah.
10 minutes or something, no one would sit and watch it, and then that way it helps the charity and there's actual utility in the film other than just being a film. Like this, I wanted to not, I didn't want to make that like my film. It's like a stupid thing to even say. It literally is just a tool to help people go to a website to donate to the people on the front lines, you know, and refugees.
Yeah. Yeah. Because like the only other film I've talked about on this show with somebody who has a similar length was Marshall Curry's film A Night at the Garden, which is literally just about um, the Nazi rally that took place at the Madison Square Garden, and
Oh,
it's about
you had him. That's I haven't seen it. I heard that yeah, he cut it together and kind of made a film of it, right?
yeah. Marshall's a good friend of the show. He's been on at least 2 or 3 times,
That's
both
awesome.
before and after he won the Oscar. Um, Fun fact, I didn't realize he won the Oscar until later because I don't watch the Oscars. So I felt like a jerk when I reached out. I was like, "Hey, congratulations!"
No, it's better.
That's
It's probably better. You're just like you didn't even. You're like yeah, whatever. You just don't even bring it up.
yeah. I was like, I felt like a jerk later because I was like, "Oh crap, he won it." I was like, I didn't realize it until like 8 months later. I was like, "Oh," and I
Well, what are you
messaged
gonna
him.
ask him? What was it like to win an Oscar? He was like, good. He'd be like, great. Yeah, like, so you're good,
I mean,
man.
we interviewed him a little. I interviewed him again afterwards, and I asked him, the funniest thing was that like before he didn't have people, and I would just go back and forth with him. After he won the Oscar, he then had people where I'd have to go through people to get to him. And I'd be like, he was like, yeah, if you want to schedule a talk with this person, I'm like, you have people now, Marshall? He's like,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Wait, did he go to Siena?
No, I found the film A Night Garden, and then I had him on afterwards, and he found his contact information. He said he would love to, and then came
Oh,
on.
that's so cool. Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
So
One
did you?
one
So I don't mean to. Sorry, I don't mean to ask you questions, but do you have like do you talk about film on here a lot?
somewhat. This is basically a type of show where it's basically
Kind of free form. Yeah.
free form, like kind of think of it like Joe Rogan minus with like a time restraint, and where it's just kind of like I just reach out to people and ask them to come on.
Hell yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, so I've had people from politics, business, sports, the inventor of the 401k, bunch of people. Actually, one person who's big in Hollywood who actually has connections apparently to the capital region is John Caglione, the Academy Award winning makeup artist.
Oh, I don't know. I don't think I've met him or know what.
He's he's doing the show in a few weeks, but he was the makeup director for The Dark Knight, Dick Tracy, The Sopranos, Saturday Night Live, and
Cool.
like a bunch of late
He
night.
grew up in Albany.
He didn't say Albany, but he told me that he's from like the capital region, like the area.
That's all.
So which I didn't
There's quite
know.
a few. I'm friends with quite a few people from Albany out here. Which
Yeah.
which is cool. Who are making movies that I'm working with and stuff. So there's a little bit of a like a Albany Hollywood satellite out here.
Oh, that's cool. I did not know that. Um, yeah, because like it's funny where it's just like this area, and I still live in the area. I'm from Schenectady, and I live in Schenectady now. And it's funny how much of a reach like this area has. Like how many people from this area. I mean, like, you think of sports too. I mean, like I don't know if you're a sports fan, but if you think of like
I'm a diehard New Jersey Devils fan, and then basically, and then I like the Yankees and stuff, but I'm mostly like I'm just a huge Devils fan.
yeah, but like
The
if you
Albany River Rats.
oh yeah, I mean we still want them back, but the Carolina Hurricanes are
Yeah,
not going to get
yeah,
them back.
they're in Utica. I don't know, whatever.
Yeah, but the two top coaches in NBA history, people like to say Pat Riley and Phil Jackson, both are either from here or have a connection here because Pat Riley's from Schenectady. And then Phil Jackson, before he's winning championships with Kobe Bryant and Michael
Yeah,
Jordan,
yeah,
was the head coach of the Albany Patroons.
yeah. Have
And
you ever read his book?
I've read two of his books, or three of his books, actually.
What's the one? It's like I just remember it. I forget the name of it, but it's amazing. It's
11 Rings,
no, I think it's like his or one of his like his like maybe his first book because it's like really
Sacred Hoops,
like not a long book.
Sacred Hoops.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sacred,
because
100%. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, no, I'm fascinated by him. I kind of got hooked on it, especially when the Last Dance came out. I think a lot of people got back into the during COVID when the Last Dance came out. Everybody got back into that kind of like '90s uh, era basketball, and I read and I picked up the book, and it was amazing. And I apply. I really believe that there's a lot of application I use from sports and for following sports because I was not athletic and did not play sports. But
neither my
yeah, following sports, I apply a lot of that mentality to making movies, not movies as criticism or as making writing movies or but the process of because movies is not it's not so much like a process of just sitting down and being creative. Like that is a great part. That's why I love writing and I love editing. I think they're very similar in many ways because it's kind of just like more of an isolated person at work. But
yeah
everything in between, the packaging the movie, financing the movie, pre-production, production, all that stuff is almost like it's not just kind of like painting a canvas. It's like dealing with tons of people. It's artistic because you're trying to capture something artistic for the edit room, but it's much more dealing with people and less artistic, I think, artistic with quotes of being like of what people think of making a movie is. It's just dealing with a lot of problems and kind of having to be a leader and all this like random stuff that weirdly can apply to or helps help me have sports apply to it, you know?
yeah. The funny thing is about coaches, especially if you bring up Phil Jackson, is that they're really managers at the end of the day, like a business
Right.
manager. The only issue is that thing is for them is that their end product is measured in wins and losses on the field, court, ice rink, whatever, and everybody sees them instantaneously. It's
Right.
you get far faster results from being coaches than a business manager, I will say. But especially with
Yeah, no,
media,
it's a media, and in some way, even in the movies, there's this kind of weird thing where movies are made pretty, they're like I have a company, so there's a film company I have, so there is a little bit of that like how do we do this year or season, you know what I mean? But like with movies, they're one offs. TV is
yeah,
different. I don't work in TV at all. I don't I'm not I've always just been a film purist and people give me kind of crap for it, but I came here to make movies and that's just I'm gonna kind of stick to that. But like with movies, it's very strange because yeah, it is just like a one off and then you move on. As opposed to kind of, running a company where it's just like hopefully a long slog over years. But movies, well, actually, it's the funny thing though, is the movies, it takes years to get them off the ground. I mean, I have projects that I've been trying to get off the ground, or the movie in the summers that I had at Sundance that that took the director, the writer director 8 years to make. I have a project that I've been trying to make for 9 years. So it's the projects do take a long time. But once you have a package, it's pretty much a you run and go and it's over.
Yeah, I mean, another film group that we've had on numerous times, mostly due to their relationship with my family, is Big Sky with James Tusty. James, shout out for you. But like he talks about how most of his work is really just raising money and fundraising. I mean, he did a movie for my family, which was kind of this mini documentary on my grandparents before they died that we did. But that was all paid for by my uncles, and there was no real constraints besides that. But in most cases, he tells me that like most of the time you're spending time trying to either get it approved or people to finance the film.
Yeah, so
Because
there's a great quote by Orson Welles where I think he said, the director of Citizen Kane and Touch of Evil, and he was
yeah,
like, 90% of my life is uh raising money for movies and 10% of my life is making movies, and it's like, and he's like, it's no way to live, but like, but he's like, but I'm addicted. So like, no, it's a really annoying process, and any movie that gets made is like a miracle because it's just so many things have to go right with cast and the idea and then getting money. Like it's a pain. I mean, it's raising money is just, and putting together the project. Not, I would say getting cast is half of that, because once you get cast, you can get money. So having meetings with actors, dealing with their agents. It is so much of what the industry is. And then underneath the industry, which is a whole other industry, is the development industry. And so
yeah,
there's a whole industry of just people writing scripts, selling scripts for, 6 figures or sometimes 7 figures. And then it gets rewritten, and then other writers come on, and then a director comes on, and then an actor comes on, and then they do another rewrite, and another writer comes on board. But a lot of these movies never get made. So people have made a really
yeah,
good living. I mean, how I make a living is I write scripts, and I don't think any of the movies that I've been paid to write have been made. Yeah, they haven't. So like, that's a whole other industry that people don't really know about outside the industry, because it's like, why? How would you? But there's an
yeah,
entire ecosystem of projects, that are just in development, and there's a whole economy for it, but just they don't get made. It's a very strange part of the industry. But it's great because there's work as a writer, because like I said, I mostly get work as a writer, and then
yeah.
and then just like, you can't get your hopes up though, because you're like, who knows if this random company is gonna come up with $10 million to make this, but as long as I get paid, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's funny because like I actually have two scripts in my desk. One of them right here is a Everybody Loves Raymond script, and
Hell yeah.
this was actually Doris Roberts' script from the one episode, because I have a guy who sells like scripts, and although I knew him through Facebook, my Facebook got hacked. I'm trying to find a way to get back in touch with him, but I'm looking at these, and it's funny how like just thinking about how these scripts go from where sometimes there's not much information on the script, but then you have to turn it into a movie, and you bring up the whole entire process of script writing. How does script writing work for you? Like, what's your thought? What's your process with it? Like, what's your method to the madness, pretty much?
Yeah, totally. Right before I answer that though, try to get Phil Rosenthal on, man. He created Everybody Loves Raymond, and he's like,
Oh yeah,
yeah, he helped me. He helped promote my Ukraine film. He's obviously like a really good dude.
I he's one of my dream guests. I don't know how to get in contact with him. I've been trying to
Yeah,
find his contact.
I talked to his agent, and and then Phil put it on his Instagram and stuff like that to help raise money. So like, I don't know. I'll give you his manager's email address, and you can bother him.
Oh, that'd be
Um,
very much appreciated. Have you ever read his book,
100%.
though? By the way, You're Lucky or
What?
Funny. Have you read his book, You're Lucky or Funny?
No, I haven't.
It's if you're a fan of Everybody Loves Raymond, or you're interested in how they
I mean,
make
I see. The
TV.
thing is, I'm just like him. I just vaguely remember, because I'm a Seinfeld guy. I would just remember seeing it
Yeah,
sometimes like before or after Seinfeld. So I really haven't even really seen the show. But
yeah,
I know he's a good dude, But with writing, yeah. So I basically have like, there's two different types of writing I do. There's writing I do that is movies that I want to direct. So what that entails is it usually comes from more of it's like an original script. It's not based on anything. It's not based off a book. It's not based off a true story. It's usually something that I want to write to direct, and it's typically written for a something that would be under $7 million, so it's realistic that I can make it in the next 5 to 6 years. Because
Yeah.
where I'm at right now as a director, I cannot get financing for a movie that's over $10 million, obviously. So, but with writing, so that's one bucket is the script writing for me as a director. The second bucket is movies that I write for hire. So sometimes I'll say, I have an idea. Here's a treatment. Can you write this script? So that's a different. Then I'm just writing. Not writing for me as a director. I'm kind of writing for me, writing scripts as I'm being asked to do it, and I can kind of shapeshift into whatever tone of the movie it is. The process specifically on any script is I usually sit and work on a treatment and meditate on it for like months and make the treatment very exact and basically get notes, or at least make sure I know that the treatment makes sense with character motivation, structure, the 3-act structure, everything makes sense. And then eventually I'll just write the entire thing in 4 days with very little sleep, and 4 or 5 days, sometimes 6, not even though. I'll write the entire thing. So I'll spend months on the treatment. And then once I have to write it, I just kind of puke it up, and I just don't really sleep. I don't eat. I just literally write for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours until I get it done.
Yeah.
And then I stop, and then I take a breather, and then I'll just kind of like an ironing board. I'll just kind of go through it and just make little changes. But I need to make sure that the thing works in this treatment first, in the outline first. Because if it doesn't work in the outline, I think that's the most important thing. Because a lot of people write, and this is everybody has their own process or whatever, but a lot of people write the script as a first draft without kind of like a full outline. So they're just giving themselves so much work, because and then when someone has notes and they realize this doesn't work, then you have to go back and change the entire thing. You have to literally change the entire script. Basically have to rewrite the script.
Yeah.
So having it, I like to have everything really thought out beforehand and really challenge myself and have other people check it out, kind of poke holes in it before I write. So that way when I write, I'm kind of in the moment. It's like I'm not like, oh, I got to write 2 pages today. Like for me, that doesn't work. I need to just be totally in it in my head, or else it just becomes kind of sloppy and sloggy.
Yeah. It's interesting how you point out that a lot of people just go in without an outline and just go for it. I mean, like I think of how many shows pretty much, especially within comedy, they'll literally just write jokes and then just write a story around the jokes. And how many times that will shift. Just other things like that. Yeah, it's weird to think about.
And writing comedy is a whole different thing. I like everything I have is a little bit comedic. Like there's a little bit of like a weird tone to it, an offbeat tone. But I'm not a comedy writer with a capital C. Like comedy writers are more like joke per page. Like it's a very like stringent, like rigid way of writing. That's like mostly for sitcoms, or TV,
Yeah.
or like a studio comedy movie, which don't really exist anymore. So like, or at least I think they'll come back in some form. But they're usually, like Netflix movies or whatever, which is cool. But like, that's a different, like, I would be interested in doing that. I'd probably need a writing partner on something like that. But I'm not a comedy writer, but I'm fascinated by comedy writing. Like I'm such a fan of like Sid Caesar and like Larry David and like the Faulty Tower, people who created Faulty Towers, like Mel Brooks is like one of my heroes. So I admire comedy writers so much. I mean, I would say Mel Brooks is a little bit more different. He's a little bit more like his own thing because he's also like a great great director and like all this stuff. But yeah, so I'm a big fan of comedies, but I don't see myself doing a sitcom as a writer.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, yeah.
Or the new version of a sitcom, because obviously those don't really exist anymore.
Yeah, because like I was thinking about this recently where like during the 80s, maybe during the 70s, there was a huge boom in sitcoms. And then during the 80s, comedy focused more on stand-up specials.
Yeah,
And
like
then,
because they would go on Carson and then get a night and then get a sitcom deal. Yeah.
And then during the 90s, you see this switch to sitcoms where, like, for example, because we talked about Phil Rosenthal and Everybody Loves Raymond, Ray Romano got his start because he went on to the Tonight Show, did a couple jokes, and automatically Letterman just goes like, "Oh, we got to sign this guy." And instead of going on to do basically like what he would have done in the 80s, which was basically stand-up specials, he then goes on to do a sitcom because that was the big thing in comedy at that point. If you were big, you got a sitcom like Tim Allen, like all these other guys.
Even Gary Shandling when he got on Carson, like he was one of the first because he was like, I don't know if I can do the Tonight Show. So then he did Gary Shandling's show. It wasn't a sitcom, but it was like a totally different new thing. I just watched Zen Diaries, the Judd Apatow documentary on Gary Shandling. Check it out if you
Yeah,
haven't. If you're into
I
comedy,
have it now.
oh, you will love this. It's one of the best docs about comedy I've ever seen.
Yeah,
Yeah, like I mean Seinfeld, all that stuff. The '90s were crazy for comedians. Everybody's getting sitcoms. I mean, I can't even imagine
yeah,
what it would be like in being in
yeah.
Hollywood for that.
It's the same reason why Everybody Loves Raymond, like, and Phil Rosenthal points this out in his book, that the reason that like his story is like in the show is all based around like living across the street from his parents and having a singular brother that lives with him is because that was Ray Romano's life. And that was really his first acting job, as Phil Rosenthal said, like, oh, I couldn't make him a spaceman from Mars. I had to make him what he knew because this was his first ever acting job.
Right.
But then you move to today, and there's still one or two like sitcoms around, but most of comedy is going towards stand-up specials again.
Yeah.
Like Dave Chappelle, although he had a show, it wasn't a sitcom, it was a sketch show back in the early 2000s. Now doing stand-up specials all the time. He knows he had one or two back in the day.
I mean, they don't even really compete for late night. I'm really glad that Mulaney has the new Netflix the late night show. I think that's kind of the future. I think it's gonna kind of go back to a more goofy, fun late night vibe than kind of the more run of the mill ones on the legacy channels. I just feel like it's pittering out a little bit.
Yeah,
But I
well then
think that with Mulaney though on Netflix, I think it's great. I think it's a breath of fresh air for late night. I think that's probably where it's going, and Mulaney is incredible. So I'm pumped about that.
yeah. Um, then you get into the whole kind of discussion of cord cutting. But we have about 5 to 10 minutes left. So I'm going to give you like two or maybe two questions kind of to end this off with. Number one being, you said you were a big Seinfeld fan earlier in the show.
Yeah.
Um, I have myself have not yet seen Seinfeld. It's on my list, but I have a couple friends who are huge Seinfeld fans, and
You
I've
you
seen.
have a physical Ray Romano script, but you haven't seen Seinfeld? That's
Yes,
wild. That's insane, man.
well, I have. Well, my family is a huge Everybody Loves Raymond family.
Got it.
Like that's my
You gotta watch
family's.
Seinfeld. You're
Uh,
I thought like Gen Z was into Seinfeld. I thought that was like a thing.
mostly due to streaming, but Gen
Yeah,
Z's
yeah.
more
Like during
what I've
COVID, I feel like
seen.
a bunch of Gen Z people watch Seinfeld.
Yeah, but I mean, like a lot of them also too are mostly into The Office and Friends.
Right, yeah. Office is big. I was never a fan of either of those. I mean, they're obviously very talented, like well-made shows. I'm just kind of being like a viewer, obviously. I'm just being like, yeah, but
Yeah,
I never got into those. Just the Seinfeld was always my bag.
yeah. I mean, I have a Everybody Loves Raymond script and a Family Guy script currently. But
Family Guy. I'm a big fan of Seth MacFarlane. Ted is one of the great community comedies like ever. I love that movie.
yeah. Um, but for like my family's and Everybody Loves Raymond family, and I have friends where it's just like their sitcom is like a their family sitcom is a Seinfeld. I've kind of realized in my years is that each family seemingly has like one sitcom that their family's like really huge into, and mine happens to just be Everybody Loves Raymond.
Yeah.
Um, but I gotta ask you about the finale of Seinfeld, where I won't spoil it for everybody on the audience who, or I guess we have to discussing it.
Yeah. Don't worry about
But,
that. It's a long time ago.
but spoiler alert for like 30 years, or if you have been on the internet in like 10 years or whatever, but obviously all the characters go to jail.
Yeah. Or
Um,
no, they go to court. They go to court. Or you're saying all the
well,
main
yeah.
characters go to jail? Yeah.
Some people hate that. Some people say like, oh, it should have been like Jerry and this character end up together, and one of Kramer's inventions take off or whatever. And then I have my other friend who literally told me, it's like, yeah, I was perfectly fine with that because they're all terrible people in the show. Where do you stand on the finale of Seinfeld?
Well, I like it. First of all, I find it really funny that that type of show needed like some great finale to me. It's always I always find funny, but like whatever, aside the point, let's just go with it. I actually remember watching that live. That's how I'm probably showing my age there. I watched that live as a kid, and I remember watching the ending, and I remember thinking that I was like, I think the ending during the show, I remember watching this and thinking, I think Kramer is gonna get away, and that's gonna be the kind of joke. I mean, I was like probably a little kid. I was a little kid, so but I was like, Kramer's gonna be the one to get away because he was filming it. And so maybe that the funny thing will be is they go to jail, but they're like, but Cosmo Kramer was actually helping the person who was getting beat up because that's why they got in trouble. They didn't like do anything about it. I was like,
Yeah,
so I remember being a little kid and actually thinking a little bit about that, being like, oh, what if it's a so I like it. I think it's great. I'm a fan of the end of episode because it's like you bring everybody back. Like, how else are you gonna do that? Like, unless one of them's like sick or something, like you get to bring back. You put them on trial. Like, I thought that was brilliant. I don't understand how people don't like that ending. I like maybe like the obviously the joke in Curb at the end of Curb is like they come up with the idea of being like, oh, they get out of jail or I forget what they. I wasn't too big of a fan of
yeah,
the season of Curb, but like other than maybe the end, the final episode was brilliant. I don't understand why people have qualms with it. And also, even if it's not brilliant, like it's not like the end of the end of Sopranos is something that's a little bit more like the stakes are much higher because it's a dramatic show. But it's like it's Seinfeld. It's
yeah.
you know what I mean?
It's just like is even though I just started kind of watching Sopranos, it's more just is Gandolfini and them, are they dead or are they in witness protection? Like because it just cuts.
Yeah, yeah.
And um but yeah, I mean like it's also going into the thing of like, do you have to do something huge for a finale? Because like some shows it's literally just
Yeah, I mean, like,
they
I don't,
move.
I don't. It's funny because I actually like that we're talking about TV because sometimes all I do is talk about film, and then with interviews, it's usually about my films, and it's way more fun to talk about comedy and TV. But it's so like, because
Yeah,
I don't do it, I'm more of just a fan. It's like, but no, I think, you know, with a film, I like to end with a bang, like at least when I write and when I watch a movie. And so for TV, for sure, and I think a lot of shows actually end up having to cram a lot in at the end because
yeah,
like oh shit that's our last season where TV shows are natural or unnatural ways of finishing something because typically you don't even really know when you're going to end. You're getting a lot of like notes from the network. It's not as pure of a medium as something like film because you kind of know the ending. I mean, it's one thing.
yeah,
That's it. Where TV, you kind of there's a lot of things contingent upon certain things. I mean, your ending might just be kind of random. You might get cut off the season, cut off from the network or the streamer. So like,
yeah,
but if you're in a position like Seinfeld or Everybody Loves Raymond or Sopranos, and you know this is the end, and you can do whatever you want, then like yeah, you might as well go out with a bang, you know.
yeah. And it's funny you bring up Everybody Loves Raymond because you also think about other shows like Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, like the show ends with them moving out of the mansion. Phil Rosenthal talked about how they didn't want to do that. They didn't want to have this big send off. So Raven's finale was literally like Raymond goes into surgery for like a minor surgery for like lymph nodes or something like that. And they have trouble waking him up for a second. And everybody's sitting there going like, are they going to kill him? Like, is he dead? And then like all of a sudden at the end, there's this huge scene or there's this like scene where there's like Robert's like trying to break in there and all this other stuff. And it literally then like 2 minutes later, it's like, oh, he's fine. Like this happens sometimes. He's slow to wake up. And nobody tells him for a while, including his mother. His mother didn't know either. But then the show ends with Ray sitting at the table with everybody else piling in, including his parents, his sister-in-law, everybody. And he ends with saying, "We're going to need a bigger table." And then the shot just pans out. And that's with everybody who had annoyed him for all these years and stuff like that. Whereas I said it to one of my friends that like Everybody Loves Raymond is a story of a man becoming thankful for what he has.
Right.
Because for the
It's
entire
kind of like It's
series,
a Wonderful Life spin.
yeah, because for all these years, he's annoyed that his parents are living across the street and they're there all the time. But then it takes this like, core sort of near death experience, even though he wasn't really near death, but to really like drive it home to him, like, man, I really am a lucky man. Where it's just like he's then sitting at the table in the kitchen where the show ends, where the show also began in the kitchen. The first scene in the first episode's in the kitchen as well. And it's just them panning out and that's it. Whereas a normal sitcom would have just been like, oh, the show's ending. We have to move Raymond out of Long Island and put him in Australia or something, and then take them out of the area. But Phil was just like, no, we're not doing that. We're just going to make it just like
I gotta get Phil. I'll connect you with Phil's agent because I'll be like, dude, I won't even say it's a stand-up podcast. Like, this is an Everybody Loves Raymond podcast. Like, it rocks. It's the best Everybody Loves Raymond podcast I've ever heard. He'll come up.
I don't. That wasn't my goal, but we started talking about
No, you're good,
sitcoms.
man. I love it. I love it. I love talking about comedy. I'm telling you. Like I said, I actually literally just watched Zen Diaries by Judd Apatow about Gary Shandling, and then I really love the movie Funny People, which is
Yeah,
based on Judd Apatow's relationship in part, based on his relationship to Gary Shandling, who was his mentor. I think it's an amalgamation of a few people he was a protege to. But that's a really good movie about comedy. It's one of my favorite. I would say
yeah,
that Lenny and King of Comedy are the three best movies about comedians.
yeah. And on that note, we do have to end it though because we are a little bit over
You're good.
time.
You're good.
But this has been WBCR 88.3 Saint. I'm Justin Kenny as always. And tonight we've had the pleasure of having Janek Ambrose from Assembly Line Entertainment on. So, Janek, thank you for being with us.
Yeah, no problem. I'll come back anytime, man.
Yeah, love to have you back. 3, 2.